So Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Paksta called for an extension of the AGOA agreement. That's on day one of the forum. The 21st African Growth and Opportunity Act Forum is being held in Washington, and the South African delegation is being led by Minister Dau. The theme for this year's AGOA Forum is Beyond 2025, Reimaging AGOA for an Inclusive, Sustainable and Prosperous Tomorrow. Well, to unpack some of those discussions from day one of the forum, Aldrin Sampear spoke to Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Andrew Whitfield. And he started by asking him what South Africa's message is in Washington.
There are a number of messages, Aldrin, and the one is that we value this relationship with the United States. South Africa is the largest beneficiary because we've been very serious about utilizing AGOA to our benefit, over $20 billion in trade both ways, the majority of which benefits South Africa. We have a positive trade surplus with the United States. They don't have the same with us. And so we must appreciate the efforts over the last quarter of a century almost that AGOA has brought and the opportunities it has brought to South Africa. There are a range of contentious issues, as you say, but most of them are easily managed. And I say that because there is nothing more important in a trade relationship than building strong partnerships and building a deeper connection in our relationships with our partners. And so a big part of this week has been to reach out not only to the political decision makers, which we are doing, which are critical, but also to civil society and specifically business, big business in the United States that is invested, businesses that want to invest, listening, as the minister has said, listening carefully to what messages the stakeholders would like us to take back to Pretoria in order to continue to strengthen the relationship. There appears to be consensus that over the last year, a lot of work has been done to strengthen what has been a strained relationship.
Earlier on, I was speaking to Dawie Rood, and he says that considering that you do have a GNU, which of course includes the Democratic Alliance, that perhaps the relationship could be solidified even further. Is that the view that you have as well?
Well, I must say, I mean, I landed in Washington yesterday. The minister's been here since Monday. In 24 hours, I can tell you that the energy in Washington towards South Africa is palpably positive. It is positive primarily because of the ability of our nation to navigate an extraordinary difficult time where a party that had a majority for 30 years was able to accept and acknowledge defeat, get around the table and negotiate a new government. This is not something by any standards, not just African standards, but by global standards that people have seen and seen twice in South Africa, first in the early 1990s and again now.
But would you say that South Africa currently under the GNU has a cohesive message that it is sending to Washington, and specifically on the basis of that bipartisan push that we've seen from some lawmakers in the United States to have Washington review the decision to have South Africa included in AGOA?
Well, I think that the visit by Premier Winde sent a message as well to the United States that there are other voices, that there are provinces, that it's not just that AGOA benefits South Africa, it benefits communities on the ground which exist in provinces, which exist in local municipalities, and that we are a competitive multi-party democracy, which I think is important. And I think that the GNU message has been well received. You asked the question, is it cohesive or coherent? We have been so far. It's been 48 hours in Washington. It's been 3 weeks for the GNU, and we're very open about that. I think it's very important that we're also open with our partners that even within individual political parties, there are contests around ideas, policies, etc., and that's not going to be any different for the GNU, and that the noise is one thing, but the reality is that we are forced by the people of South Africa to achieve consensus positions on critical issues.
Is there a conversation that is going to be had at all that looks into South Africa's current geopolitical stance, which again has been a major issue? For instance, the refusal to condemn Russia when it comes to Ukraine, and also the decision that was taken by South Africa to take Israel to the ICJ.
Well, obviously, those discussions do come up in our engagements, and I'm sure they will continue to come up during this week. The minister has repeatedly emphasized the importance of rebuilding our trade relationship. Obviously, we can't ignore the elephant in the room, and that's no reference to any of the political parties here in the United States. But the issue is that we have to confront those difficult conversations in an open and frank way. There has been a discussion that, obviously the GNU is 3 weeks in. There are a number of policy issues that we're going to have to negotiate and discuss as a team. The minister has emphasized South Africa's sort of active non-alignment insofar as our foreign policy is concerned, but continued to bring it back to the point that trade as a diplomatic tool, trade as a relationship that we need to strengthen between our two countries, can assist in influencing policy positions that may be of concern.
What are some of those issues that you think that still need to be ironed out?
Well, I mean, you highlighted them. There's the conflicts in the Middle East. There's the issue between Russia and Ukraine. We are in an environment now where we seem to be seeing rising protectionism. We see borders closing. We see a global trade conflict or trade wars emerging. And so we're navigating a very difficult space, obviously. The American electoral cycle is in full swing, as you know. And when our electoral cycle is in swing, there's extra noise. And so I think, we're trying to navigate through the noise and to present our business case to the United States. We are very open and honest about the views around foreign policy and the fact that the GNU and the 10 political parties within the GNU may hold different positions.
When it comes to the Donald Trump administration, a lot of protectionism really came through. Is there a concern at all for South Africa that if a Trump administration was to win, if a Trump administration was to come through, that could be a major bottleneck for South Africa?
If you want to do deals in Washington, if you want to have lasting relationships, you have to have relationships on both sides of the aisle, Aldrin. You have to have discussions with Republicans and you have to have discussions with Democrats. And you have to set your politics aside and put your country first. Our economic interest is what we are here to represent to our best possible ability. We have to make sure that we have those conversations across the aisle. And if we can strengthen our relationship from a bipartisan perspective. And I think a lot of people don't understand how bipartisan Congress actually is. And so while this electoral cycle is underway and congressmen and women will go on recess to campaign and there'll be a lot of noise, and we have to continually maintain the relationship on a trade level with key stakeholders in Congress across different political parties. And that is going to be the key to success here.
Are you confident that South Africa will remain part of AGOA as an AGOA member? And another element around this is the extension of AGOA. Last year, there was a push as well that it should be longer than 5 years, longer than 10 years. And I know there's a proposal that has been made that it should be at least 16 years. Where do we stand currently?
Well, I'm confident that if we continue the momentum that we've generated in just 2 days throughout this week, and that we continue beyond this week to strengthen our relationships with the United States around AGOA, I'm confident that we can get it across the line. The question is when, Aldrin. There's a debate around early renewal. The elections are in November. Congress goes on recess in August. And so you've got 60 days from the end of recess until the elections. This is an extraordinarily difficult timeline, as I indicated earlier, for us to work within. But we're not giving up. If we don't make it before the elections, we will continue to engage both parties, whoever is in the administration.
Is there a possibility at all that South Africa could lose that #1 spot? Or some companies that are part of AGOA deciding that instead of relying on South Africa, rather take some of the products that they wanted manufactured to a different country on the continent?
I think that risk is what I would refer to as healthy competition. And I think that what we need is competition. I think that to some extent we've become complacent as a country economically. I think we've taken for granted our position on the continent. And it's not just Nigeria. We look at East Africa, we look at Kenya, we look at Rwanda, we look at the competition around the automotive sector and how they are spreading their footprint across the continent, and also then the opportunities, but the pitfalls of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. But I think ultimately what we need to do is remind, as we've done last night with the business community, remind them of the work that's been done on energy supply, remind them about the work that's going to be done around ports and logistics, around them about the partnerships that businesses have brought to government and working together to seek solutions to get things right. We talk about Operation Vulindlela and all of the key reforms that are required, where South Africa has that opportunity to scale up quickly because we have the pre-existing infrastructure. It's just not been well looked after and maintained. We need to upgrade it. We need to get it back online. We need to make sure that our supply chains are well repaired, maintained, and upgraded. And that is going to require a conversation with the private sector. How do we unlock deep pools of capital in order to improve our infrastructure? These are conversations happening in Washington. These are conversations happening at home. But, I think that just to answer that question again, the risk around whether businesses want to relocate or not, I think is a healthy reminder. It's a competition that we need to take seriously. It's something that hopefully is going to drive urgency around decision-making in the GNU.
Finally, Deputy Minister, what is it that you want to come back with? What is it that you want to say to companies in South Africa that are also beneficiaries of AGOA, that this is what we have brought back? Because as we know, it is not permanent.
I'd love to come back with a renewed agreement, but we know that that's not going to happen. But what we want to come back with is a few things. Number one, we've made it very clear that we're here to listen. We don't have all the answers. We've been in government for 3 weeks and we're still trying to find ourselves around policy and various other issues. We've had a good start. I mean, let's not ignore that. The Lekgotla and the outcomes there, the process around the medium-term development plan is moving positively. We want to bring back the constructive criticisms that we're going to be hearing this week in Washington. We want to bring that back into the government of national unity to say, these are the frank conversations we've had. These are the lessons or the advices that is coming from both our allies and our opponents abroad, because we're talking to everybody. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we hope that we can trigger some investor confidence here in the United States to look at key projects, as I said, around infrastructure, how businesses in the United States can partner with business and government in South Africa to address the key reforms around whether it be the criminal justice system, whether it be logistics and ports, whether it be our energy supply. There have been some progress around energy supply. There's a lot more work to be done. And so we're looking to strengthen the partnerships from business to government so that we can leverage the capital that is available in order to push our reindustrialization as a country, but also to sustain the extraordinary work that small and medium-sized businesses do in South Africa without any support from the state.